Just because you can name what you're feeling doesn't mean you're training something new. Welcome. Today we're talking about something subtle but foundational. How the way you talk about your emotions might be reinforcing the very patterns you're trying to change. This matters because your nervous system doesn't care what you say. It responds to what you practice. And when language becomes a buffer instead of a tool, it keeps emotional intensity at a distance. Which means the emotional state never shifts, no matter how much insight you have. So let's start here. Language can either bring us into contact with emotional intensity or keep us just far enough away that we never actually train anything new. A common example, someone says, "I'm overwhelmed," but what's actually present isn't overwhelm. It's powerlessness or panic or inadequacy. Overwhelmed is just the name. The emotional state being trained is something deeper, and unless that's engaged, the pattern stays. Here's what that means. Every time you say, "I'm fine," or "I'm just stressed," and then move on, you're reinforcing the nervous system's default response, not interrupting it. Here's the loop that runs the show: perception, emotion, thought, action. Let's say a coworker cuts you off mid-sentence. You perceive it as disrespect. That perception generates an emotional state, maybe rejection or collapse. That state fuels thoughts like, "They don't value me." And from that, you act, either by shutting down or trying harder to prove yourself. That entire loop happens fast, and the more often it runs, the deeper the pattern gets wired into your system. But here's what most people miss. Talking about the pattern doesn't interrupt it. Only training a different state inside the same perception does. A client once said, "I know I'm stuck in people-pleasing. I've done a lot of work on boundaries." But she still said yes when she wanted to say no, because the trained state, fear of rejection, was still running. Her nervous system didn't need more awareness, it needed new reps, because insight doesn't retrain the loop, repetition does. So when you say, "I know this already," but keep reinforcing the same state, you're not stuck because you don't understand. You're stuck because you haven't trained something different. There's a big difference between naming a feeling and being in contact with the emotional state driving it. Someone might say, "I'm angry," but anger is often a secondary response to rejection, shame, or fear. And if they stay at the level of anger, they never train through the real intensity underneath. This is where language becomes a strategy, not a tool. It gives the illusion of emotional engagement without requiring capacity. But emotional transformation only happens through training. And training requires contact with the actual state, not just the label. Here's a practice you can try. When you're feeling activated, pause and track the body before you label the emotion. Are your shoulders tense? Is your breath shallow? Is your chest collapsed? These are signals of the state you're actually training. You can say you're calm, but if your jaw is tight and your hands are clenched, you're not training calm. You're training contraction. And every time you bypass the body and go straight to words, you reinforce disconnection. If this is landing, subscribe. Each week I share grounded practices to help you train emotional states with clarity and structure, so you stop cycling through the same patterns and start choosing how you show up. Another example, someone says, "I know I have imposter syndrome," but what they're actually practicing is fear of exposure. That fear fuels thoughts like, "They're going to find me out." What drives action like overworking, over-explaining, or shrinking? Naming imposter syndrome doesn't interrupt the loop. It might help them feel smarter, but if the emotional intensity is left untrained, the pattern continues. That's why in this work, we train the state, not the story. Now, let's be real, training a new state isn't about forcing yourself to be positive. It means learning to hold emotional intensity and redirect your nervous system toward the state that matches the outcome you're committed to. If you want to create connection, but you're training defensiveness, you'll sabotage the interaction. If you want leadership, but you're training hesitation, your decisions will lack authority. The key isn't forcing a new behavior. It's building the internal capacity to stay in the state that supports the identity you're becoming. This is what it comes down to. Every time you default to, I'm just stressed, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who's always under pressure. Every time you say, I'm overwhelmed, and shut down, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who doesn't trust themselves to move forward. Your emotional state isn't just a passing experience, it's the foundation of your identity, which means choosing a different future requires training a different state now. There's no such thing as not being good at emotions. There's only training and repetition. You build emotional strength the same way you build physical strength, through consistent reps at the edge of your capacity. That means feeling the contraction, tracking the urge to escape into language, and redirecting again and again into the state that matches your chosen outcome. That's what builds real freedom, not release, not catharsis, training. If you're hearing this and thinking, this sounds like me, you're not broken. You've just been training emotional avoidance and calling it insight. That pattern can shift, and it starts with your next rep. So what does this look like in real time? You're in a conversation, someone criticizes you, your perception, they don't respect me. The trained emotion, rejection. The thought, they're judging me. The action, you shut down or defend. Now, to shift the pattern, you don't need to change them. You need to train a different state inside that same perception. That means slowing your breath, dropping into presence, choosing confidence, even as your system flinches. You're not bypassing the intensity, you're retraining your response to it. Used well, language can be a tool. You might say, I'm tracking contraction and choosing alignment. Fear is present, but I'm training clarity. This feels intense, and I'm steady. Now, you're not describing the emotion, you're directing the system. Language becomes an instruction, not a distraction, and that's when it supports transformation. What emotional state are you practicing the most without realizing it? And is that state aligned with the identity you're committed to becoming? If you're ready to stop managing symptoms and start training emotional alignment, there's a system for that. It brings together perception, emotion, and nervous system conditioning so you don't just understand your patterns, you shift them. Links below. I share weekly prompts and training practices over on Instagram at Mike Wang Coaching. And if you want more depth, you can join the newsletter below. It's where I share real-life examples, structured exercises, and tools to support your training. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.